All right, folks. USC coming off 5-7, of course, but they're on the field for their second week of spring practice. Looking ahead to 2019, and for Clay Helton's sake, if nobody else is needing to win a few more games, we got Scott Wolf on the line from inside USC. Scott, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Mark?
I'm doing just fine. Um, would love to get some information on USC, of course, and see if there's potential for bounce back this year. I think the schedule sets up pretty rugged for the first 6 games or so. We can get into that a little bit later. But in regards to the quarterback situation, that is first and foremost on just about anybody's mind, especially outside the USC circle that don't know the ins and outs of the other positions. But JT Daniels, of course, the hotshot coming into the fold last year, performed well at times, not so well at other times. The offensive line could be blamed at times, and the scheme as well comes into question. But Jack Sears looks as though he's going to have a say in the quarterback battle as well.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a wide open competition because they're moving into an air raid offense, and the quarterback's going to be throwing the ball a lot. And they claim they've only got 4 running plays in the whole offense, so a lot of the decisions are up to the quarterback. And Graham Harrell, the new offensive coordinator, says he's going to start from scratch in terms of evaluation. So JT Daniels, Jack Sears, and Matt Fink are all, trying to win the job. I don't think Fink has a chance. I think it's going to either be Daniels or Sears. But, I think most people assume Daniels will win because Clay Helton prefers Daniels. But Sears did have a good game last season when he played in his lone start. And truthfully, a lot of the fans like him. And more truthfully, although the players won't say it, maybe on a TV interview or in an interview, with a reporter on the record, behind the scenes, I think most of the team prefers Sears to be the quarterback.
And as you mentioned, Sears had the one shot last season against Arizona State, and despite a narrow loss, performed pretty admirably. 20 of 28, 235 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. In his one opportunity, JT Daniels a bit up and down, 14 touchdowns and 10 picks. You mentioned the offense and the new concept with Graham Harrell coming in, a Texas Tech quarterback in the mold of the Mike Leach offense and throwing the ball all over the place. As you mentioned, the air raid, which is kind of ironic because Cliff Kingsbury was hired Texas Tech quarterback and head coach. So staying in that same line of philosophy, it sounds exciting. Let's throw it 60 times. And let's get our playmakers out in space and get the ball out of the hands of the quarterback and be wide open and exciting and put 45 points on the board every week. But I don't necessarily know if that's the formula for championships when you look at the elite teams across the country that appear to be a little bit more balanced. So in terms of the football-minded people, what are they saying about this new approach?
Well, I think there's 2 ways of looking at it. One is, USC, despite how bad they were, they aspire to go to the college football playoff, and they aspire to win national championships. And the air raid, as far as I know, has never won a national championship. So, that would be one way of looking at it. The other way, according to, Graham Harrell, they are going to try to be balanced, even though the air raid does throw a lot. He's saying they're going to run the ball a lot too. So we'll have to see how that works. I know when he was at North Texas, they had some good running backs and they had good stats. So he does like to run the ball more than, say, Mike Leach, it looks like. But, this is one of the questions I think a lot of the fans are curious about, to see how it actually transpires once they get into a game.
You brought up the name Mike Leach, and if you look to the north, obviously they have proven to be a emerging contender, although they haven't sealed the deal and gotten the job done on the last game against Washington, but been very successful with 10 wins, actually 11-2, I believe, after the bowl win this past season. And Mike Leach, yeah, he wants to throw it 70 to 75% of the time and does. I think the big separation there is when he arrived in his first season or two when they were not successful and he was still building the program, the running game was non-existent. It was deplorable. Now when they do run it, they are successful. They still, again, only run it about 30% of the time, but they're at least successful. It's at least a threat. They at least have the scheme and the players in place to have to keep the defense honest. And I would think at USC, the running game is going to be always need to be a bigger factor. You can draw better talent at that position than a Washington State, and so you would want to at least give running back recruits something to go on that they're not going to be forgotten in their aspirations to be big time players at that level and move on to the NFL.
Yeah, I mean they've got Stephen Carr, Vavai Malapai, Marquise Stepp, so they have some good running backs. And Clay Helton's always claimed he wants to run the ball and have a balanced offense, and he's talked about that in spring too. How even though they're going to this air raid, he does want to run the ball. But it's interesting because the first 3 practices they said they put the whole offense in, so it's supposed to be a very simple offense, and they only have 4 running plays according to Graham Burrell. So I think a lot of it is the quarterback reading the defense and making quick decisions and throwing the ball as quickly as possible, not dropping back and taking a lot of time to throw passes. So it's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds when they get into real games with real pass rushers, because a lot of times it looks great in 7-on-7 and it looks great in practice when the quarterback can't get hit. But as we saw last year, when the other team can actually rush the quarterback, sometimes you can have problems.
We're on the line with Scott Wolf from inside USC, talking Trojans with the players in camp for the second week of spring practice. And of course, 2018 in the rearview mirror, hoping to win more than 5 games and get back to the top of the South Division in the Pac-12. You mentioned Clay Helton, of course. His investment would be high, but especially high this season because I don't know, can he really survive another 5-win season? Just talk about maybe some differences that you've seen in him and his approach, whether that be in reality or perception this offseason.
Well, he's trying to be sterner, a little tougher in practice. I think he's trying to create an image because he's been criticized, I think, for being a little soft on the players. It's kind of like we were just talking about the offense and everything else. There's image and reality, and I definitely think he's trying to be tougher. The question is, do the players buy it? Because they've all seen how he is, and a lot of them don't listen. A lot of them kind of do what they want to do. So can he change? And just because he acts different, do they really buy it? Because he used to say himself when he got the job, you got to be genuine with the players. So if he's just trying to act like Mr. Tough Guy, I don't think they're going to go for it because they already know what he's really like. And it's not really like it's a boot camp or anything right now. And I wouldn't say it's a whole lot different than past springs. So, I think he's just trying to act like he's tougher than he was before.
Yeah, that's a difficult act to prove to the players once you've established yourself. And we're going back to mid 2015 in regards to Clay Helton being the head coach at USC. So he's going on 4.5 years, and he is what he is, and he has already shown his cards. So that's you can obviously adjust and evolve and learn from mistakes and missteps and show yourself to have corrected those things, but to be a different guy. I don't necessarily know if that's going to work. We got Scott Wolf on the line from Inside USC talking Trojans. This is Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Of course, we deliver the best in discussion, debate, and analysis with top-notch bloggers, broadcasters, and writers from across the nation. Any other particular, we talk quarterback, other positions that you're keeping an eye on that intrigue you as we work our way through the spring and head toward August?
Well, I think in some ways it's similar to last year. To me, the success of the team, a lot of it will rely on the secondary and the offensive line. So, is the offensive line going to be better? It has to be better, and maybe the air raid is meant to sort of take pressure off of them. And then, they lost their two starting cornerbacks, Ajane Harris and Iman Marshall, and then Marvell Tell was starting at safety. So three guys leave, and right now, two of the safeties that probably are going to start are not even practicing because they suffered injuries last season. And then they've only got three healthy scholarship corners right now. So it's pretty wide open. And I think corner is going to, not safety, but corner is going to be their biggest question mark next season. And I'm not sure they're going to be very good at corner once whoever they pick to be corner. So it's going to be interesting to see how they do. And I think teams are really going to want to pass the ball to test them out early in the year.
The 2019 recruiting haul was a disappointment by USC standards, still by most, as a top 20 class, still a fine class, but not the elite selection of athletes that you typically get. A couple of those guys, but not 8 or 10 of those guys that we see at the top of draft boards or recruiting services. 2020, your thoughts about where we're headed? As we mentioned, and you explained to me before we started to record, it just seems as though, and I've seen this as well, that more players are being plucked away from Southern California than at any time in recent memory by the likes of the SEC and others, as opposed to USC really locking down the best players in that part of the state.
Yeah, well, I think some of these schools smell blood in the water, and LSU's already gotten two commitments from two schools, Mater Dei and Narbonne, that USC usually kind of owns when it comes to recruiting. Both very good schools football-wise, and they both produce a lot of prospects. So that's a problem. Although later today, USC might get a commitment from Joshua Jackson, a wide receiver from Narbonne. So that would be like the first probably bit of good news for them in terms of 2020. But they have a lot of obstacles when it comes to recruiting right now because the kids know Clay Helton might not be back next season, and people that are getting recruited by them want to see what happens on the field next year, and they want to see how the offense looks. They want to see if the defense is better. They want to see if players are developing. That's the biggest thing recruits say is players are not developing at USC. So it's hard to recruit right now for them because schools are telling their recruits, if you go to USC, you're not going to get better, and you don't know who the coach is going to be during your career.
And I believe we're referring to a 5-star cornerback, Elias Ricks, who has committed to LSU as part of their number 2 nationally ranked class right now, according to 247 Sports, and also the second-rated running back in the nation from Clovis, California, Kendall Milton. So still plenty of talent in the southern portion of California, just need to reel them in. And as you mentioned, with Clay Helton on the hot seat, most people believe, then players like to know who they're going to be playing for, and 5 and 7 is not a good look either.
Well, Ricks in particular, he's the number 1 corner in his class, but his mother went to USC. So in the past, a guy like that was just locked for USC, and here he is already committed to LSU. And I know kids change their mind all the time, but it's a bad look right now when he's going to LSU. And then there's also a big defensive tackle, Josh Berry from Narbonne, who's committed to LSU. So, it hurts probably a little bit too for them when Ed Ogeron used to coach at SC for many years, and he can come in now and take guys that normally would have gone to USC.
No, it's a great point that you just made, because most of us are familiar with Ed Ogeron's brief stay as head coach on the interim basis, in which he won 6 or 7 games and represented himself fairly well, but didn't wrap up the permanent job. But that was at the end of a long coaching reign on the staff there at USC. So he definitely has his ties, his being firmly entrenched in recruiting there for a long time as an assistant. So definitely a good point there. Scott Wolf from Inside USC breaking down Trojans football. Anything else we need to hit you up on here, Scott?
Well, they do have new coaches at running back, defensive line, defensive back. So there's been turnover on the staff, and I think they view that as a good thing. And a lot of people, I think it's a good thing. The question is going to be, can you come in 1 year and make a big transformation, especially when you've still got Clancy Pendergast as the defensive coordinator, John Baxter, special teams coach. And those two guys, especially Baxter, get criticized a lot by the fans, but Helton loves him. So you've got a little bit of a disagreement there on how good a coach he is. And Pendergast didn't do a great job last year either with the defense. So it's going to be an open question how much change there really is that's taken place over there, because we know the offense is going to be a lot different, but we don't know if the defense and special teams is going to be a lot different.
And Scott, I've got to think that the schedule is a concern as well, because taken in totality, it's a tough schedule. It's a strong schedule, but it's not a ridiculous schedule. But the problem is that coming off 5 wins, and with the vibe of the program being what it is, at least the perception of that, coming off the 5 wins, and with a young team, young quarterback, inexperienced quarterback for the most part, depending on who wins the job, out of the gate is the difficulty. So the record could be decent at the end if Clay Helton can keep his players' heads in the game, because they may not get off to the best start when you look at Fresno State, Stanford, BYU, Utah, Washington, and Notre Dame the first 6 games.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those schedules where, it's not the toughest schedule in the world, really. But as you saw last year, if you're not playing very well, it can suddenly turn into a tough schedule. I mean, it's amazing that they lost to Cal last year, and they were 5-7 playing in the Pac-12 South, which was atrocious by national standards. So now all of a sudden, because of that, Fresno State was good last year. Stanford's always a tough game. BYU, if they're on, they beat Wisconsin last year. So, Notre Dame's Notre Dame. So if USC's sloppy, not quite sure of itself, has these bad habits from last year, yeah, they could be in a lot of trouble. But, in the old days, a USC team probably wouldn't have been too worried about that schedule. So it's going to be interesting to see how they react. They don't have a lot of confidence, I think, going into the season. So if they have some early adversity, then watch out. That could be a problem.
All right. Good insight from Scott Wolf on Inside USC. Scott, we appreciate you stopping by.
Anytime. I love talking football.
All right, Scott.